Recording started.
Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Community's Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 551. My name is Eric Nelson, and with me today, I have my regular co-host, Matt Longeth. Today is Wednesday, April 14th, 2020. Matt Longeth, how you doing today?
Eric, I think I'm back about a year ago. Really, this is maybe a little deeper than we need to go on the podcast, but it was just top of mind today. And I think about where we were at with just knowledge and all things about the pandemic and situations with work and home and life in general. And so much has changed in a year, right? I just feel like that we're on the cusp of a great thing. We're on a cusp of making a turn. There's a lot of things that we've gone through as a community. We've been away from each other from events and whatnot. And I brought it up a couple of different times on the podcast, but I feel grateful for being able to get through this. I feel, I'll share that, I was able to get a vaccination shot, and I encourage others to do the same. And I feel blessed with this job opportunities that have come about through some struggles through this time last year. So it's just an oddly serious point of reflection, but I'm grateful, I'm thankful, and I can't wait to get back to see everybody again. I really, that's top of mind today, and I know that we're getting there, and I'd encourage everyone to get a vaccine if they choose to do so. But that's enough of all things serious, sir. How are you? How are things out there? What's the weather on the West Coast? And as always, what's the color of the bay?
Well, thanks, Matt. It's good to hear that you're coming out of the pandemic with some good thoughts. Personally, I love being sheltered in my house for over a year. I'm kind of a hermit, so I'm enjoying this. Don't want it to end. I'm really disappointed that I'm gonna have to go meet people again and get out in society. So, yeah, that's my take. But the color of the bay, I'm only kidding, but the color of the bay is a wonderful flat green. It is nice, 70 degrees here in California. Sunny, not too hot, not too cold, right into April, what we'd expect here in California. So nice weather, sunny, not windy, not too hot, not too cold. So we're enjoying what I call a little bit of California. On the show today, we're going to be talking to Dean Lewis. Dean Lewis runs a great blog, theeducate.co.uk. We're going to be talking to him about some of his blog articles he's got out there. And if you're watching us on the vBarbecue YouTube channel, you can see us. You can see what all of us look like, what Dean looks like, what our home offices look like, everything about it. So we'll talk to Dean in a little bit, and we'll get his intro. But before we do that, we'll just run through a little bit of news. I do have a little bit of news. VMworld Call for Papers opened up yesterday. So welcome to Call for Papers. And I think it's open for maybe 6 weeks here. So if you have some ideas, go get them submitted on vmworld.com. That opened up yesterday. I have a couple of good paper ideas which they'll all ignore, but who knows? Maybe I'll submit them and get an opportunity to present. And
I will say that if you are a customer that has TAM services, please let your TAM know that if you were that persuasion to submit for that call for papers, that you are interested in submitting. I would say that you stand a much better chance with a high number of submissions that if you would go in as a sponsored presentation rather than just as a standalone. So always let your account team know that you're interested in presenting and putting a presentation together for these call for papers. It much, I would say, improves your chances. Would you say that that's a fair statement, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the magic is. I know that they are going to have more sessions because it is online, so you have a better shot of getting a session. I know they're also going to be integrating Slack this year, so there will be real-time conversations during the presentations or during streams. Don't know how they're going to do it yet. I know that we're looking at building out a virtual village as part of the vmworld.com environment, so I don't think it's going to be the same as last year. I think it's going to be better. I think we learned a lot of lessons, and we'll be there. I think we're got a better job of managing content and the experience. So yeah, I think that you have a shot of getting a paper accepted, because there is a larger number of available slots, because we are recording and live streaming. Don't know if they're still going to have the full, send you the virtual studio and you record. Not sure how they're doing recording this year, but I have heard that we are going to have Slack. We are going to have more real-time engagements. The community components are going to be free. Last time, some of the community sessions of Brown Bag and whatever were the extra fee. I know that we are going to be running the VMware Code Connect event during VMworld this year. So it will be happening Tuesday and Wednesday. So I think the show opens keynotes on Monday. So we'll be day 2 and day 3 of the event. We'll be running during the event, and we're trying to get a continuous place, just like we have in the community booths in the village, where you can just come and they're running all day long. So if you come to our live stream, the live stream will be open and streaming all day long, and you can come in and you can be on Slack chat and you can talk to community and be part of like in the village. And if I can get you a little virtual icon avatars, I'll be in love, right? Because we did that back in 2008, I think, where we had the actual virtual pavilion with little icons and things like that. I don't think we're going to actually get the in-expo virtual little icon walker arounder people, but it should be a better event than it was last year. So we're looking for that. And we are talking about doing it for, 24/7, 2 or 3 days in a row. So we'll keep that thing alive. And instead of having to get on a jet and fly red eyes over to Europe, which is normally what we do, and we get up trashed, we'll only have to sit in our own home offices for 24 hours a day for 3 days. I think it's an even trade. Right. So if we can just get some tapas delivered, by, the delivery services, then I'll be fine. Right. We'll have a good time. Okay. With that, Corey Romero, I know you're out there in Utah. I don't know if you got anything going on with vExperts this week or not, but I thought we'd just say hello. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. The weather here in Utah is snowing. Believe it or not, we went from 70s to snow today. So Utah weather is literally all over the place. But as far as vExperts go, so we sent out some new licenses. We sent out licenses for both Cloud Director Availability version 4 as well as vSAN 5.5. So if you're a vExpert, those should be in your licenses. We also do have 2 additional programs coming up, subprograms, BU led. One is going to be, I'll announce them because I got the okay. One is going to be vExpert Avi. So I've been working with the Avi team, as well as the desktop hypervisor. So we're going to create 2 new subprograms for vExpert. Those emails probably won't go out for at least a week and a half, but when they do, when it opens up, I will email all the vExperts, and away you go. Just apply.
Nice. Speaking of Utah, I don't know why, but on the vBarbecue report today, I am going to be talking about corn. So I got a special corn report. So if you hear till the end of the podcast, if you hang out, you will learn a little bit about my cornfield. All right. Yes, I indeed have a cornfield this year, and we can talk a little bit about the barbecue corn field. And with that, let's get to our main show guest. So on the show again today, we have Dean Lewis. So Dean, what is your title? Tell us a little about what you do. What has your career arc look like? It doesn't look like you just graduated college yesterday, so you must have some kind of career arc. And then we'll get into your blog after you tell us a little bit about that.
So I think that's just the beard, right? Makes me look a little bit older than I am. I've just hit 30. I hit 30 in November. So for a few years, it shocked people how young I was, and now I've hit the 30 mark. Nobody seems to be quite shocked, and I definitely look older than 30. Okay, so my current job title. So I work for VMware. I'm a cloud management specialist, solution engineer here in the UK. Live just outside of Manchester. And what's my career arc look like? So I think, like everyone, I started, back on service desk. Before service desk, I actually used to work in the car industry for a famous company in the UK, working on their customer service desks on phones, being shouted at by unhappy customers. And I think that actually really helped before I started working in IT, because I kind of started to understand what true customer service was. And you have a lot of unhappy people in IT. From there, I went and trained, did my CompTIA and Cisco CCNA certifications at college. And then from there, I actually moved into working at another college, their service desk, and then in very quick succession, ended up being managing their infrastructure for them. I've always been really, really interested in technology and being technical. And learning more. And then after a couple of years working in education, I kind of learned everything I could. Really, really fortunate that back in, I think it was around 2007, we were using VMware View. So before it was even had the Horizon name, 4.5, and we were the first customer to go to 4.6, which unfortunately wasn't a brilliant experience at the time.
You say painful. Yep.
Yeah, you could say painful. But I learned a lot, and I think that really opened my eyes to VMware and enterprise technology and so forth as well. After a couple of years of learning everything I could, being a customer, I then moved on to being a consultant. So I moved to working for a value-added reseller as a professional services consultant, and then very quickly moved there, delivering the technology to them being able to design the technology and deliver it, and then moving more towards a pre-sales point of view. And then I actually stayed there for a number of years, changed quite a lot of roles. Also were acquired by another company, which brought a lot of opportunity. And then I decided to branch out. I'd actually been knocked back to work at VMware, which hurt a little bit because I really wanted to come and work here. So I moved for a short stint at another MSP in the UK that's quite well known, just so I could see a little bit different side of the industry, different customers, different way of working, a different company to learn from. And then I was graced with being able to come and work at VMware. So I started off as a technical account manager. And then in October of last year, I moved across to the cloud management role that I find myself in now.
Yeah, that's a nice arc. Thank you. I appreciate getting the idea of taking us through your career, because so many people don't actually take that time to do that. And I got to ask you a question or two, just because I did some consulting work in the UK. During my consulting work in the UK, my job was like getting on trains, getting into the city, meeting customers, enterprise banks. Did you end up having to do that? Did you have to end up getting in the city and having meetings in tall buildings with bankers?
So living out, so I lived in the north of the UK. North to most people in the UK, I'm sure our Scottish colleagues would argue with me there, that I'm not quite that north. So I didn't spend most of my consulting life actually working down in the city, which was quite lucky. Although I did work for one or two key customers down there, which was quite nice. But a lot of my time was spent really within a 2-hour distance of where I live, which was quite nice. I moved to VMware, and then all of a sudden the world just opened up massively. And thanks, Graham. I can see he's just put a note in there saying he's Scottish. So working at VMware, then I was supposed to be UK based, but I was also working with some of our largest enterprises, which afforded me the opportunity to not only work in the UK, but travel to the US for the customers, travel to India as well. There was a little bit before, the worldwide pandemic where, I was out 5 days a week on planes every other day and not knowing kind of where I was going to next, which was, it was an interesting place to be. And then, overnight we stopped travel internally at the company, and I woke up one day, and rather than being up at 5 a.m. to travel down to London, I was waking up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and nothing to do because people were still adjusting to working at home.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I did the second place I ended up doing more work was near Edinburgh, because there was so much activity around the university that I would spend time over there as well. So interesting. I kind of look and go, God, I'm glad I don't have to be on trains anymore, like over there,
yes,
or anywhere for that matter. Right. So, all right. With that, we'll do a switch into your blog. So, we always love to find interesting blogs. So veducate.co.uk. How long have you been blogging? And I noticed you have a lot of blogs. What's your frequency? It looks like you're a lot of blogs. Maybe you're a new blogger. Don't know how you sustain the
So
number.
I think I've now been blogging since around God, it's got to be over 5 years now, I think. So what actually happened is when I moved to being a consultant and moved out of working in education, I actually met someone who was also a VMware expert at the consultancy firm that I worked for. And it was around the time of the vExpert announcements. Now, I'd never heard of the vExpert program at the time, and he just got his first vExpert award status. He was actually a VMUG leader in the UK as well, which, I also found out about. Didn't know about VMware user groups either. It was all new to me. And I sat there chatting to him, and he was talking about the fact that he blogs and giving back to the community. We sit here Googling so much all the time and reading other people's content. And I really like that idea of, giving back and having something to offer back. And, I was fixing things on a daily basis as a consultant. So why not, again, type up the things that I was finding, the support tickets that I was helping to fix, and doing the same that, everyone else was already doing. So originally my blog used to be called educationalcentre.co.uk. A little bit behind the domain name there, it's a little bit of a mouthful, but the reason behind it was whilst working on the service desk and looking after the infrastructure and education, I actually moonlighted as a CompTIA trainer at the same time at another college in the nighttime for adult learning. And originally I had this bright idea at a very young age to take all of my material that I was producing for the classes and create a study guide for CompTIA. So I actually set up the Educational Centre domain name as just to be the name for to publish under, self-publish. Unfortunately, I never quite realised that dream because to anyone who has published a book out there themselves through, Pat's Publishing, A-Press, or, done it themselves, hats off to everyone that's done that because it's a hard task. So after a couple of years, kind of realising maybe the domain name needs to be a bit snappier, I changed it to vEducate.
Nice. I think that all of us, I don't know how many, raise your hand, how many people have had great content that they use in their job and then they put it into a class and then go teach a class for a little while. I know that I've done that a few times, usually consulting gigs where somebody will reach out and go, hey, we need somebody to come educate these number of people. So I've done some class dabbling myself. Never works out, right? I don't know why I never managed to make that stick more than a handful of classes, right? Maybe I'm just not that good in all my reviews. I'll tell you a funny story. One time I taught a class. I did this class. It was like a couple week long class. And you know how you get forms at the end where you actually get reviewed by the students, right? And it was and somehow that bad review that one guy didn't like me, somehow got scrumpled up and thrown. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, we had that going on. Matt, you've been quiet. Have you ever had to teach a class before?
Eric, one of the first IT jobs that I had was for a company. Let's back up. So the company was a government printer. So in the US, there is a whole entire industry around printing government forms, tax forms, tank manuals, IRS documents, things for different, Department of Defense, Department of Health. It's an entire industry. And in our local geography and around central Pennsylvania, we have one of the largest government contractors that does this. And they were moving over from a analog press to a digital press process and needed to retool their workers. And many of these were senior type folks that had been there for quite some time and weren't familiar with computers. I mean, didn't have one in their home or whatnot. So the company made a decision, rather than outsourcing this, to bring it in-house and train their employees. And I got invited through some people that I happen to know to get involved with this and teach classes and write training manuals. And this was back in the, dare I say, Win98 days. So it's back there. But yeah, it was a great experience. And actually the company was successful enough that they spun off that whole division to then go and sell that service of teaching and educating employees that they had come across specifically within the print trade to bring them up and to teach them all things about digital press. So that's my teaching experience. It was great. It was a great way to get my feet wet as a young IT wannabe. So
Yeah.
I had a great time trying to teach some folks all things Win98.
All right. And with that, we will transition to something that people actually care about here. I think we all care about training, but let's get into what I thought was one of the more interesting blogs. You have a lot of blogs on your blog, but the one that I think makes sense because you're now in this cloud role, one of the ones I thought stood out was Tanzu Mission Control deploying TKG clusters to AWS. And I'm like, I wonder how many people have actually done that out there. So we thought that would be a great one to start with. Like, how did you pick this? Was this something that VMware made you do? And then take us through the blog a little bit.
No, so interesting enough, my actual role day to day is focused around the vRealize suite. So vRealize Operations Manager, vRealize Automation, doing a lot of work around automation because, with automation, hey, you touch a lot of areas. The Tanzu Mission Control is I'm personally slowly studying for my CKA exam. So that's the Kubernetes, Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam. So again, being at VMware, try and take advantage of all of that knowledge that's shared around the access to the systems. I really like the Tanzu Mission Control. Learning Kubernetes is cool. It's fun, but you can also kind of see, where it needs to be a little bit more enterprise features. You need to provide high-level access to certain systems to particular users and, maybe departments within your business. So I started working with and using Tanzu Mission Control last year, and actually started to write the TKG on AWS blog. I think just before Christmas, just never got around to finishing it off. And again, that's VMware has done a fantastic job of taking what is Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, the multi-cloud version, the version that can be installed across cloud platforms, so that's vSphere, AWS, Azure, and made it quite easy. There's a command line tool to do that with. They've put a UI on top of it as well. But how do you make that, again, a little bit more enterprise? So Tanzu Mission Control gives you the ability to say, hey, here's my AWS credentials, and hey, I want a cluster, and you fill out a form and you click go, and it gives you that kind of cloud-like operating model to really deploy it. A little bit like when you go directly to AWS, you can set up an elastic Kubernetes service cluster. So that's AWS's own opinionated version of Kubernetes. And yeah, it's quite simple. You have to kind of understand a few of the concepts around AWS, such as VPCs and networking and how to set up an SSH key pair. But, everything's a quick Google away from that point of view. And then, Tanzu Mission Control handles most of that for you. I think one of the reasons why, I blog these types of subjects as well is, I don't want to call out VMware here. Their documentations, is pretty spot on compared to most, a lot of vendors out there. But I like seeing the screenshots and the outputs when people do it themselves as well, because, you go to the VMware and it'll say, hey, run the CLI command or click here in the UI. And you're like, okay, well, I can't find that in the UI, or I've got a slightly output that I want to query. Does that look the same as someone else's output? So, being able to create those technical walkthroughs is quite handy. I personally, as well, for my own learning, I learn by doing. So to understand how to use Tanzu Mission Control, to understand how to use Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, I will go off and do that myself so that I can learn it and understand it. Just unfortunately, reading manuals on their own, it doesn't quite sink in for me.
Right. So do you have a home lab? How did you, actually accomplish this?
So as it stands today, I don't actually have a home lab. I've donated it to one of the technical account managers in the UK to bolster his lab for resources. So at the moment, I'm using access to an internal lab at VMware. It's just a very small lab with a couple of hosts, and then I'm typically just running a handful of virtual machines that I just want to test, spot things in, and then try and take advantage of things like Azure credits and AWS credits as well. And this also really interests me as well, is everyone hears the name VMware and we all know vSphere today. We all know VMware is that virtualization company that, we own the virtualization market in terms of foothold there and in terms of the name and the brand. But VMware over the last couple of years has transitioned beyond that data center, that vSphere, that hypervisor level. And we now offer software and services which, work in your native cloud platforms, such as AWS, such as Azure, such as Google Cloud. We also offer our software as a service. For many years now, we've been doing Workspace ONE through the, originally was the AirWatch acquisition, for mobile device management. But now Tanzu Mission Control to, manage your Kubernetes clusters, control policies, control RBAC access across multiple clusters. That is a SaaS-based offering as well. And you don't need an underlying vSphere platform to consume those that offering or that product.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always struggle with how to get SaaS licenses, how to do that. It's great if we're VMware because we have budget, we have, these things, we have internal labs, we have accounts. But then as a user, it's fine. You have your own lab. You can set up Tanzu on that, right? And we give licenses for vSphere for all the vExperts. But then when it comes to the SaaS services that you have to connect to on AWS, right? Like you have to set up an AWS account. You do have to burn some amount of money. Maybe I wonder what the budget looks like for somebody that wants to spend some time doing this. I would guess it's under $2,000 that you would have to allocate to EC2 instance or something.
You can obviously sign up on an email address to Azure and get, I think it's $200 worth of credits just out the box, and that doesn't even require you to interact with Microsoft for a start to get those credits. And you can do a lot. There's also a lot of free services from the public cloud providers. If we think about the VMware SaaS offerings, we've got our hands-on labs, so a lot of that technology that might be a little bit harder to access. Hands-on labs for me is a fantastic start. As a technical account manager, when any customer came to me and said, "Hey, Dean, we need enablement on this product," the first thing I do is say, "Oh, well, if you check hands-on labs, it's free. We don't even need to involve anyone to do with estimates, quotes, sales. Go on there, and the content's free for you to consume." I believe, actually, if you look at the Tanzu Mission Control hands-on lab, you can actually access that in your own local browser as well. You don't have to do it through the canned hands-on lab experience, which is fantastic. And of course, for the SaaS-based offerings, we do still offer trials that are available as well. You obviously have to just kind of imagine in terms of accessing that content from VMware. It is VMware's managed services when you come to us for the software as a service. vRealize Automation is a great example. We offer it in the cloud as a managed service hosted by VMware, so you don't have to deploy virtual machines. But you still can have a on-premise based offering that you'd be able to get an NFR license through the vExpert program. You will be able to get licenses through joining up to vMug for the vMug Advantage experience as well. And in the last, I think it's maybe 2 years or so, VMware has also produced something called VMware Test Drive as well. And this is kind of taking you a little bit away from the hands-on labs, which is kind of maybe technical learning walkthroughs. And the test drive is more focusing around the solutions and looking at the proof of value of those solutions as well. So maybe you want to actually look like, what would this VMware solution look like in a enterprise setting similar to my own data centers, my own clusters, my own Kubernetes clusters, whatever it may be. VMware Test Drive is another great place to go and poke around in.
Okay. I'm on your blog. I'm looking at the article. It's not that long. It's very short. I like all your blog articles because they're really to the point, right? Like you don't spend a lot of time. You're just there. Here's how to do it. It's almost like a how-to manual a little bit. Like go do these things will work. I just have a comment. This is kind of an aside. Are you running dark mode on the screenshots? I noticed the screenshots are all dark gray, blue.
Oh, you've picked a bugbear with me there. I don't get what the big deal is in the industry with dark mode. I get the point of view that it saves energy on your monitors if you've got the right OLED little bit things installed and stuff like that. Tanzu Mission Control in those blogs is dark mode by default. I haven't even checked to see if it has a light mode to turn on. If I shared my monitors today, you'd see everything on my monitor where possible is normal mode or light mode. as well. For creating the content, the how-tos, I try to be really informal to take you step by step with the screenshots so that you can, walk through it yourself and compare screenshots, because I find that easier. I try where possible to show you outputs, especially command lines, rather than just say run this command. If it returns no output, I'll show you a screenshot returning no output, just so you can kind of validate that. And then the other ones that I'll do is a spot fix, is where I'm just saying, I've hit an issue, and I'll say, what's the issue, what's the underlying cause, and what's the fix? 3 headings, short as possible, because I hate, it's great people blog the answer out there, but sometimes I hate scrolling through and trying to find the actual, how do I just fix it?
Nice. Yeah. All right. Nice article, to the point. I get confused by dock mode because it just doesn't look like VMware now, right? I'm so used to looking at the classic vCenter white with the icons and dark text that I run into these screenshots and I'm like, wait, is that AWS? Who built that, right? It's really quite nice. I actually don't like super light on back. I have a hard time reading it, so I'm a fan of dark mode just for that. So yeah, very nice. All right. And then don't forget to click on the continue reading on his blog article, because you kind of give a snippet of the blog article when you're in there and it looks like it's short, but then if you do click the reading, it takes you on more, which is an interesting thing. If you miss that, you're going to kind of wonder where it went.
Little hook in that I'm giving you enough information so you want to read the rest of the blog. So actually, if you subscribe to my blog as well, because I'm just using WordPress, when I release a new blog, you will get an email with that up until the continue reading piece. Now, occasionally I do forget to actually add that into the post. So you will then get an email of just the full blog post itself. So, the deploying the TKG to AWS is, when you take the size of the screenshots in there, is quite a lengthy blog post. So that made for quite a big email coming through my inbox the other day as well.
Right. So the command line, the CLI, you getting access to your clusters through the TMC CLI, right? Just a personal choice. Are there additional things you can do in the command line that you've noticed, or is it just basically whether you're comfortable one versus the other?
Yeah. So the CLI is a great tool for, especially for TMC. If you deployed a cluster, you can give access through TMC to your developers if they're going to use the Kubernetes environment. They log in, they provide their API key to the TMC command line tool. They then say, show me my clusters that I can connect to that have been built. And then they can say, right, give me access to that cluster as well. And the reason why it's important to have that in the blog, but also to use in day-to-day in the workplace, because you're probably going to find that most of your developers, when interacting with Kubernetes, are using some form of CLI. In Kubernetes today, you spoke, Eric, that you've been running it on Raspberry Pis. You'll have come across the kubectl command. So a few people have different ways of saying that: kubectl, kubectl, kubecontrol. I sit on the fence of kubectl. I don't know how that sits with everybody else. But again, if you're using the command line, it'd be TMC login, provide your API key, TMC get cluster auth, find your kube config file, download that locally, and then straight away you can do kubectl hyphen kube config and provide the path to the file you just received from the TMC CLI, and then start to run all of your normal kubectl commands as well. Get nodes, get namespace, create namespace, deploy, here's my deployment YAML to build applications, and so forth.
Yeah, and most of us.
A friendly reminder for the bloggers out there to scrub their API keys out of their posts, and to make sure that it's either not in the post or it's hidden in general. We've seen that a couple of different instances where those keys get out there, not by intention of the content creator, and all of a sudden there was a massive bill that someone wasn't expecting.
So I actually sat, so during the start of lockdown last year, there's this security training company that did some free webinars around, get people into basics and concepts of security and things like that. And, there's tools out on GitHub that you can run on your machine that just goes off and scans GitHub repositories for you and looks for what is the fingerprint, the makeup or the pattern of AWS secrets and access keys, and we'll put them back for you. And, there's people out there that are just running those scripts constantly trying to find those keys so they can abuse them. And let's be honest, when we're in a home lab or we're blogging stuff ourselves, we're probably quite relaxed around our back. We're using, administrator at vSphere. If we create an IAM policy maybe in AWS, we probably just give ourselves full permissions to absolutely everything because we don't really care because it's a lab.
VPCs aren't set up with the most securely, right? They're wide open.
Yeah, and you've got to think of that when not only when you're blogging, but even just when you're learning as well. It still amazes me today how many people have RDP open. You can go to shodan.io, type in just the port for RDP, and it will find every available node out there that responds on 3389 for you. And there's not even two-factor most of them if you connect to them. It's protect yourself. It takes a couple of extra seconds just to have a couple of thoughts around that and to check those blog posts and those screenshots.
I think in some ways it'll reinforce by a pocketbook hit to some of the administrators that are running out there with the home lab, right? There's a true, very quick accountability if that mistake is made of whether those keys were published or not. So it's something definitely to keep in mind. Dean, a question on this as far as the workflow through TMZ. When you would deploy this same instance over to Azure or GCP, obviously it's going to ask for different components, right? The equivalent of what that VCP would be. But is the workflow itself in setting up the cluster significantly different? Or is it just asking for what the equivalent component would be?
Yeah, pretty much that. So today, TMC supported AWS now for a couple of months, just introduced Azure support. There is a caveat there. You do have to deploy your own management cluster through the Tanzu CLI first. Funnily enough, I have a blog on how to do that as well. Once you've deployed that management cluster, connect Tanzu Mission Control up to it to manage it, and then from there you can build extra clusters, I believe. There's no support for Google Cloud at the moment, but again, all of your friendly VMware contacts will be taking these feedbacks from our customers out there that want to see GCP support, and we'll get that to the right people in the business to take that on. As you can imagine, it's a SaaS-based offering, so it's very quick and easy for VMware to add features, which is what we've seen for Tanzu Mission Control since its release. We've got data protection in there, custom policies, network policies, access policies, full life cycle of clusters, whether it's in AWS, vSphere support as well now for that. But again, these features will be added as and when we get feedback from customers, and the more feedback we have for the same features, the higher on the list that they're going to be.
Why does Azure require a management cluster?
So I think it's just slightly different implementation from ourselves. We've supported deploying Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. So if we move away from the Tanzu Mission Control for a second, we've actually supported Azure for quite a while now. So you do that through a command line tool to create a bootstrap locally on your machine using Docker, or you could elect a Docker host for that. And for those of you that kind of maybe don't understand the Kubernetes terminology a little bit in depth, essentially what we're doing here is before we build something out in the cloud, we're building a mini version of it local to ourselves, whether that's on our laptop, our desktop, whether that's in an elected virtual machine running our vSphere environment or another virtualization environment. And then once it's created that mini version of itself, it then calls off to your cloud of choice. And the tool hands those different constructs. That networking in Azure is different to networking in AWS. It creates all of those objects for you, spins up the instances as EC2 or Azure virtual machines, creates the same Kubernetes services on there, and then basically clones across its configuration as well. Coming back to Tanzu Mission Control, today, from that point of view, as far as I'm aware, I think it was just an easy go-to-market that we already support building things in Azure today, so it's an easier way for us to link in. Once the management cluster's built in Azure, it's very easy for us to spawn workload clusters, which are essentially the developer application space that are going to be used to run your applications for compute resources.
So what does TMC support when you want to do decommissioning or teardowns? So let's say that we're doing burstable instances here for these particular clusters. What is available right now as it stands within TMC to decommission or even deprovision existing clusters that are out there?
Yeah, so I think if we take a step back, so what do we actually support creating? So we support creating what's known as a management cluster. So that's terminology from Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. Management clusters are essentially, that's your first kind of mother of all things. The workload clusters are where your developers will go to actually deploy their own applications. Really not recommended by VMware to run things inside your management cluster, because that's where your management services live. In TMC itself, we can create what's called node pools. So you may have a pool of worker nodes within the same workload cluster that are different sizes, so maybe different virtual machine sizes in Azure, for example, or within AWS. And those different instances could have different CPU and different memory added to them, maybe in different regions, different availability zones. So you have the ability to scale all of that up. So you create a node pool. You could say have it in US East 2 on availability zone 2A. You create another node pool which has, East US 2, but in availability zone 2C, for example. And then you add in the number of worker nodes, and you can scale those worker nodes up and down. From a deprovisioning perspective, we just do the exact reverse of that. So if you create node pools, you can scale them down from a size. So if you've got 10 worker machines, you bring them down to 1. You can delete the full node pool, which would get rid of all of those worker machines. And then finally, you can delete that managed cluster from within Tanzu Mission Control. And Tanzu Mission Control, if it is the original provisioner of that cluster, will go off and delete everything for you as well. If you've built something outside of Tanzu Mission Control and then you've attached it as an external Kubernetes cluster, then TMC will basically stop managing it for you. But of course, because you've created it outside of the product, you have to deprovision it yourself.
So to that end, if I'm provisioning the actual EC2 instances and the storage buckets that would go along with it, when I bring down these pools, it's taking the EC2 and the S3 bucket with it?
So that actually is a really good question. So if you are just scaling down the node pool or the amount of nodes that you've deployed in the workload cluster, then it will not delete the underlying storage for you, because that storage is still shared across the other nodes. It's still active. It could still be used by pods. If you delete the full cluster itself, I don't actually right this second know the answer as to what happens to that S3 storage. Does it delete everything?
I don't know the answer either. So if the pool gets decommissioned, right, and the storage would still be out there and the storage is still in use, there's a billable charge.
Yes,
potentially.
Yes, potentially there is, and that's something to look into and use the costing tools either.
Right, the monitoring tools that we offer just for these particular instances to see what would be out there or where the chargebacks might be occurring. Yeah,
that actually is a fantastic question that you've come up with there, Matt. And actually, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write a blog post on it. What happens when I delete a cluster when I've got persistent volumes in Kubernetes created that lives in today? Obviously, if you were a developer accessing those clusters and you deleted your application, so you delete your container pod, the storage will still stay there. If you went in and then said, hey, delete my persistent volume, it's going to delete that volume for you. That's just a Kubernetes construct. It'll delete it in AWS for you as well. But it's a great question as to what happens within TMC when you deprovision a cluster. It
wouldn't surprise me that it would be the instance might be different, or the result might be different between AWS and Azure, or that they would handle it particularly differently.
So whilst we're recording this, let's see if we can get an answer before the end of the podcast as well on that.
Live demo. Live demo.
I'm not going to let you have enough time to do that because I want to move on here. And I know we only have 12 more minutes, but I do, want to talk about automation, and we're talking about CLI, and back us up a little bit and go like, hey, on your blog, you also have vRealize operations integration with Tanzu. So we're talking about automation and scripting and managing. Now we get into, vRealize operations and how am I using vRealize operations to connect with TMC, Tanzu Mission Control as well. You have a blog article here that talks about auto cluster discovery. Maybe we can spend 10 minutes on a little bit of the vRealize operations topics with TMC.
Yeah. Okay. So
now that you have to real time answer that, you go ahead and see if you can get that other answer while you're answering this question.
Fantastic. We'll see how it goes, right? So I'm just going to see if Keith Lee is on the line. He is not. He's based in Ireland near me, so it's not surprising. Are you there, Keith? So okay,
yes, you can. But I gotcha.
So okay. vRealize Operations Manager is a fantastic infrastructure up view at hypervisor level. It's brilliant. It's one of the best tools out there for managing your VMware vSphere estate. There's no question about that. This great new thing called Kubernetes has come along and started to disrupt everything. You go and speak to your customers, and actually they're running Kubernetes on top of their vSphere platform. So all of a sudden, you've got this application which runs in something called a pod. And that pod runs in maybe a deployment, and then it runs on a Kubernetes node. And then all of a sudden it runs on a vSphere platform because it's a virtual VM, it's a virtual machine that's Kubernetes installed inside of. So what we can do is we have the ability within vROPs to connect inside your Kubernetes instance, not just Tanzu Kubernetes. We can discover it. We can bring all of those objects that you kind of know and love from a virtual machine view, apply them to Kubernetes. And if it's sat on a vSphere environment, we can actually do that mapping and discovering for you to say, hey, these 4 virtual machines are actually Kubernetes nodes. And within those Kubernetes nodes, we can now see the services and the applications and the deployments that are in there as well. And then we can layer that in a topology view for you in vROPs. So all of a sudden, vROPs, I hate to say it, comes a kind of an almost single pane of glass to view that. But it's from the infrastructure up view. So when I speak to customers and the typical VI admin, a customer may ring up and say, hey, my application's down. Great, where is it? Well, it's in a Kubernetes cluster somewhere. Great. Where's that? What's Kubernetes cluster? I understand, ESXi hosts and, VMFS storage and virtual machines. Now in vROPs, you get that ability to see the kind of infrastructure up view, which is, I think, really powerful. We go one step further with that. So you can add your Kubernetes clusters in manually through the Kubernetes management pack. But we've talked about how Tanzu Mission Control can provision clusters for you in different areas. And we've also talked about how you can attach clusters in there as well. So now what we can do within that same management pack is connect out to our Tanzu Mission Control instance. And anything that's provisioned by Tanzu Mission Control can automatically be discovered by vROPs as well. So what we don't need to do is go and harass, maybe it's a different department who are using Tanzu Mission Control and but deploying not only Kubernetes clusters in AWS or Azure, but deploying them into our vSphere environment. We don't need to go and ask them for 1,000,001 details and just, maybe set up change requests and so forth to then connect our Kubernetes adapter in. We can let the system automatically do it for you. And as those cluster numbers grow, you'll just see a number of objects being managed in vROPs starting to grow as well.
Nice. I would say that's almost a key component of the solution. I mean, above and beyond TMC, right? It's that extra layer of visibility of once the TKG instance is stood up of, okay, day 2 operations, how is it being consumed? What's being spun up by those developers? What's being used? Where's the pain points? Right? It plays into what the overall situation and the overall visibility of how those clusters are being used and deployed.
Yeah, especially when we think about, a lot of customers today, cloud is the next big word, right? But cloud is still your data center. It's still your on-prem environment. It's still your clusters you have in your server rooms. That is a form of cloud. We have a lot of customers today extremely interested and actively deploying Kubernetes side by side next to their virtual machines. VMware has a really unique offering that we can offer Tanzu. So it's native at the ESXi level, so you can deploy the application code into pods side by side in this next to virtual machines. But you can also deploy Kubernetes clusters that are inside virtual machines running on top of that environment as well. And so, as a virtualization admin, you need a way to view all of that information, view those metrics, be able to troubleshoot everything. If I ring up today as maybe a developer and say, hey, my Pacman application, which is what I like to demo quite a lot, is running quite slow today in my pod, and my PVs maybe, I think there might be some latency there. A VI admin is going to look at that and think that, okay, I need to discover it. I need to know where it is. I don't really know Kubernetes. And then I think it runs on my vSphere storage. How do I figure that out? And vROPs through the Kubernetes monitoring management pack allows you to bring all that together in the same screen. And then you can start to have some proper conversations, again, with your developer as well, rather than before this management pack, you could see, if you figured out where the virtual machine was that was running Kubernetes, you could see into the virtual machine level and say, hey, well, the virtual machine shows no latency, but I don't really know what's going on inside the Kubernetes services. I can't help you there.
Nice. All right. Let's just do a shout out to vRealize Operations, vROPs.
Did you happen to know is there a lab out there for that, for the plugin, for the as of yet, that we have a hands-on lab for the management pack for vROPs for Tanzu?
I don't think there is a hands-on lab for that today. However,
I'm sure that it's in the works, right? It's as much as it's going to be used, it's something that I'm sure is being developed.
So for everyone listening, for all of you that are on Twitter, why not tweet Sonny Dua, that's Sonny DUA on Twitter. He is one of the people behind this management pack, and ask him for that management pack to be available inside a hands-on lab. And let's get some traction and some notifications pinging up on his mobile phone from Twitter on that.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. All right, we have 5 more minutes. Always ask the guest, one of the last things is, what are you trying to accomplish this year, and how can community help your blog or anything else that you're trying to do in your vROPs day-to-day job? Always ask people, or for that matter, what's your major goal for the rest of the year?
I think, I've not been too hard on myself for the last, 12 months or so on goals and what I've achieved. I've got a friend who's done a fantastic job learning Spanish. I feel really jealous because I've done nothing like that for the past 12 months. It's been really hard for us all, right? So you've got to give yourself a little bit of a break on that and realize that, you may be taking on extra stress as well that you didn't realize. Moving to this role as being a cloud management specialist, I really enjoy having conversations with customers, finding what their problems are and trying to help find a solution to their problem. I get a kick out of that. For me personally, in the community from VMware, we've got some great vExperts out there, some great people blogging. Help others blog. I get questions all the time. How do I get started blogging? It's easy. If you think you've got an opinion, if you've got a way of doing something, especially if you found something that you didn't find the answer on Google, get it wrote down in a blog. There is a fine line between copying existing content out there versus adding your own spin onto it. Find that difference. Show your uniqueness from that point of view. If, I write my blogs, if one person finds them helpful out there, that's success to me. If nobody else does, that's fine if I've helped one person. And then really, I guess, for me, personal goals for the rest of the year, I'd really like to do my Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam if I can find the time around that. And I'm really kind of looking forward, maybe not to worldwide travel, but, I'm a massive world explorer. I'd really like to get out there and see more of the world when it's safe and right to do so in the right countries as well, because, a lot of people are still struggling out there. So let's keep it safe for everyone.
Yeah, Yeah, that's a great goal, and we got to do it safely. Okay, with that, you can follow Dean at ASAINTDLE. Right? Well, how do you say that? What's and where did that put a handle?
Oh God, I think this was when I was about probably 13, and it's just stuck around ever since. So it's pronounced Saint D-L-E, so the D, the L, and the E kind of make up from my first and surname. So you can find me on Twitter there. You can find me at theeducate.co.uk. I'm pretty sure now that I'm becoming enough of a star on Google that if you just type in Dean Lewis VMware, you probably will find something about me. If you just put in Dean Lewis on its own, you used to find me. Unfortunately, now there's this really annoying guy who's become a little bit more popular than me as a singer, and now he appears on Google rather than me, unless you add VMware to it.
There you go. Dean Lewis at VMware. And with that, we're going to talk a little bit at the end. Thank you for making it to the end. We are going to add Tony Foster in. He is our vBarbecue friend, as we'd say to the show. I did talk about barbecue corn. I put in a cornfield in my backyard. I have 8 rows, five stalks deep, so I should have a 40 corn row. I'm in Palo Alto, California, so I don't have that big a yard, but I did plant corn. So if it is the gardening season, at least in the northern hemisphere. So if you want to, you can go get you some corn and find a shovel sunny spot and just dig it up and put some rows of corn in. And then we're going to have a vBarbecue corn roast here. And I think it takes about 85 days from when you plant to when you will get corn. And let me tell you, put corn on a barbecue, you just put it on the husk. If you've never done it before, you got to have seen this, but just take about half of the husk off, put it on, and let it blacken. Just let it go for maybe 5 or 10 minutes till it blackens, and then you have amazing. The husk is blackened. Inside the corn is just kind of charred, depending on how thick the husk is in different places. Spin it a few times, and you are good to go. Tony Foster, any barbecue this week?
This week I did steak. I did steak. All the talk about corn has me really interested in barbecuing corn.
Dean, I got to ask you, Dean, I know you're mute, but we're going to get you off mute. Do you guys barbecue in the UK at all?
Yeah. So definitely ever since I was born, we in the UK have this joke that we maybe only get 3 or 4 days of summer a year, and then it rains most of the year, and it's pretty much true, especially if you live in the north. So as soon as that sun comes out, you bet your bottom dollar going around the housing estates, you will smell barbecues. Even if the weather is still not that warm, but the sun's out, we will be in shorts with barbecues. We've definitely seen a bigger influence of American barbecue in terms of sauces, spice rubs, flavors, pre-prepared meats as well, coming over to the UK as well to really take from what you folks have over there in America. Nice.
Well, that's good to know. Fish and chips are kind of the go-to with a good beer down at a pub. But if you do get some non-rain weather, I guess you get barbecue in the UK as well. So awesome. Tony Foster, thanks a lot for showing up and sharing. Made some steaks. It's always good to make steaks. Can never go wrong with that.
Agree.
Yeah. All right. With that, we are at the end of the hour. Thanks a lot for listening. We will be back again next week with the VMware Community Roundtable Podcast. Till then, everybody be safe and enjoy the weather that is starting to turn good. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.